Hey, Scott with Renegade Hybrids. We're going to do a quick little overview on the 914 installation. It's not quite a set of instructions, but we're definitely going to cover various different parts of the installation process. We got a beautiful green 914. We've done the V8 conversion using an LS480. This one also has the Boxster S 6-speed transaxle, so it's going to be a fun one to take a look at. So here we go. Please keep in mind, we just got this car back from the body shop. It's not been completely detailed, it's not ready for delivery, but we wanted to get these instructions out to you so that you can take a look at it. It's going to go back over to the body shop for them to take care of the last couple little things and to detail it and make it ready for delivery after we get done with this video. So enjoy. Alrighty, we're going to start with the front end of the car right now. So this is an installation where everything is obviously complete. We have a couple extra upgrades that I'd like to share with you as well. So I'm going to show you each one of the aspects of the installation right here. So radiator installation looks like this. So here's the radiator. This is purchased from Renegade Hybrids, okay? This has got the fan set up with the relays already pre-wired when you receive it. This is a top plate, it has two side plates, and it has a bottom plate that are all included when you receive this entire kit. So the 914 LS and small block, for those people that are looking at this as for small block purposes, is this entire kit that's right here. There are written instructions on this that we can provide you. I'm just kind of giving you a quick overview. But let me discuss these right here. These are the exhaust openings right here where once the hot air comes through the radiator, it's going to exhaust out through the fender wells. Now people say, but you're heating up the brakes. Now the funny thing is the air that's coming off the back of the radiator is only about 150 to 200 degrees and the brakes are 800 degrees. So they're getting actually a really, really nice cold bath of air. So that's not a problem. But these openings right here, what we did in this particular case is we took expanded sheet metal and we welded this in. This maintains a little bit more strength here, and we added the down bars, as you can see right here. This is a very structurally strong point right here and right down just to the rear of the radiator, which is difficult to see, I realize that. But down here, this is also a structurally very strong place right here. So that kind of gives you an idea of how we strengthen this back up. If the car is going to go on the track, you're going to need to do something like this. So it's just going to be a street car. Honestly, you don't need to do either, or you can just choose to do one or the other. But that gives you an idea of the upgrade. We also moved the battery up here in the front. This happens to be an Odyssey battery. We love these. These are a fantastic product. You can put any battery in here that you'd like to, whatever you want to fit. The reason why we do this is because it gives us a little bit more room in the engine bay, which is not necessary, but it also takes the weight towards the rear of the car and it moves it to the front and it puts it down really, really low. And so this is a nice little upgrade. Then if you notice this apparatus right here, this is an inline thermostat. For more details about this, if you want to use this style thermostat, you're welcome to call Renegade Hybrids and you can discuss the inline thermostat for the 914. We can tell you about this. This is a great little setup because it has a true bypass. So once this is hot enough, then it starts to feed through the radiator. But again, it is not necessary. Right up here is where we locate the receiver dryer for the AC. This is a nice little location right here. Works out terrific. You have your condenser, which is right up in front of the radiator, and that's supported off of the side panels that are right in here. So it's directly down underneath here. So you get the idea. This is how we generally set up the front end of the car. And for more written instructions on this, we can definitely send those to you. All right, let's discuss the fuel system. Now, what we do is we do a two-pump style setup. Down underneath the original stock tank right here is a feeder pump. It's basically like a small block Chevy 5 to 7 PSI standard, like a facet pump or something like that. It doesn't need to be anything too terribly sophisticated, but it does need to volumetrically live up to or support your engine as far as the amount of flow that's going to the back of the car. We do this because of the fact that these tanks are notorious for getting a little on the hot side, not because the radiator's up here, but just because it's going to heat soak on a hot day. And so what happens is there's oxygenation of the fuel, and as you know, fuel boils at a really low point. And so what we do is we have a feeder pump that pushes the fuel back to the back. Then in the engine bay, which I'll show you here in a minute, we actually use the high pressure pump. That's going to be the fuel injection pump. So what happens is you've got the pump right here, just like the way they did a lot of the 930s. Porsche did this as well. We've got the pump here that's feeding it to the back, and it's going to put head pressure against that high pressure pump that's in the rear so that there's no cavitation. Then you don't have any sort of fuel starvation issues or anything like that. So this is kind of a nice little way to show it to you, except we can't see it. The pump is underneath this and there's plenty of room to be able to do so. Make sure when you put the tank back in, And you can see through that little inspection window that there are no kinks whatsoever, because that's one of the biggest problems with 914s. People put a tank back in, they have a starvation issue, and they don't realize that a kink underneath is what's causing their starvation. So check that out. All right, let's discuss this little guy right here. Obviously, we have the brake reservoir right here. This is the brake fluid reservoir. This right here is the clutch fluid reservoir. Now, when you do the 914 LS and you use a Boxster S 6-speed transaxle, you obviously will be going to a hydraulic setup. We're going to cover that down underneath the car as well. But this right here is where we like to locate the reservoir for the hydraulic system when we do the clutch setup. So there it is right there. There's one more thing I want to show. It's going to be really difficult to see, but we have a small little doghouse, which is right down here. This right here covers up the top of the GM throttle pedal. For those people that want to use the GM ECU, the GM throttle pedal protrudes up through this firewall just a little bit, and I can show it to you from the inside, and then we like to cover it up with a little doghouse, and so that's what that is. In case you're wondering what that is, this does have a fire suppression system because this car will be used on the track on occasion. Very conscientious owner, making sure that he protects his investment. Thank you. I'm excited to show you the inside of this car. So this particular gauge cluster, as you can see right here, looks like a 914 factory gauge cluster. Yeah, okay, so we're not fooling anybody. There is definitely some newness to it. There's no question about it. We build custom gauges, and if you want a quad gauge like the one that you see over there on the left-hand side, if you want a tachometer that's going to work with your LS conversion, like the one in the center, including with shift light capability, which is right here, and if you want a speedometer that actually has a digital readout, trip mileage, as well as GPS capability, so that you get very, very accurate speed, we can set you up with those right there, and then we can send you a wiring diagram. That orange light or yellow light that you see right there, that's our check engine light for the GM ECU, so that's a nice location to put it right there. And then if you want to go ahead and pan down to the center console right here, when we do the Boxster S conversion, we put in the Boxster S shifter. So this is a stock shifter, and then we build these center consoles right here. This is obviously somewhat of a Boxster S center console, but what we've done is we've modified it to work into a 914. Directly underneath this shifter, and it's going to be very difficult to see because it's kind of covered up, is a pedestal that holds this shifter console that's right here. And then the cables, of course, go to the back. Now, down here, we also used a line lock for the brake. That's going to be right here, so that kind of gives you an idea. This cable that you see right here is part of the fire suppression system. This is normally not here in most cars, but again, this car is going to be used on the track on occasion, and he has a fire suppression system, so we have a pull handle right up here on the dash. And we always need to have the most direct route so that there's no kinking or anything like that with regards to that. We have our 914 seats in here. As you can see, we definitely developed a set of very popular seats for the 914 many, many years ago. And then if you just want to pan down just a tiny little bit, you can see the bar setup that we did. The weakest point of the car is right there at the firewall. So right behind where the driver and passenger's back are, right there. And so we tied into the seatbelt bar. So we tied into this spot right up in here, as you can see right up there, right where the fire pull handle is. We tied into that right there, and we triangulated down to the bottom and all the way up to the front to strengthen that. And it really does a tremendous amount of rigidity, adding rigidity to the chassis. So it's a great setup. So I know we're not necessarily covering all of the specifics, but you can see how we did this. So pedal underneath, or pedestal underneath the shifter that's right here. The Boxster S console modified to be able to accommodate this style setup. And now we're going to talk about the throttle pedal. Alrighty, this is the GM throttle pedal. So this is the electronic fly-by-wire style throttle pedal, and as you can see, the position is actually quite nice. Under braking, you can reach over and you can do heel-toe as far as throttle goes, and it works out great. But these are tall, so it goes up through the firewall that's up here. And I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but you'll need to cut a hole, and then you can position it right up there. And then you can see this sheet metal plates right here. This is something that can be fabricated quite easy to hold it. This may not necessarily be the way that you want to do it, but this is how we do it, and it works out real nice. And then keep in mind, on the outside of this, right on the other side, is that small little doghouse. One other thing I can show you while I'm underneath here, this right here if you want to just pan right up here, this right here is the heater control valve. It is just literally a cable that opens and shuts the heater control valve for heater flow. And that heater control valve is behind the AC system. And this is the under-dash AC system that's right here. And so we do in-dash AC systems for a lot of the cars as well. This particular customer wanted something a little bit more easily accessible. And so this is an under-dash AC system. And so this works out great. This also has a heater core. That's why you've got the heater control valve. You can open and shut it, and so it has both the AC evaporator as well as the heater core all enclosed in this unit. This is a blower, a little fan unit. You can direct it on people. You get the idea. So that is the interior of the car. Okay, we move to the engine bay. I'm going to point out some stuff right here. Anytime you see these red heads that you see right here, this is part of a fire suppression system. This again is going to be a car that's going to be used on the track, and he's protecting his investment. So if you look at this assembly right here, this is our inline regulator. This is a fuel regulator and inline filter setup that's right here. This is where we like to put it. This is where we want to put our GM computer right here, unless of course you want to put it inside the trunk. I personally kind of like it here. These things withstand a whole ton of heat, and so it's really not going to be a problem. This is a good location for it. We did put a rain hood over the top of it. I think that's pretty acceptable. And so this is, it just kind of gives you an overview of where this stuff is. Pretty self-explanatory. Okay, this is the filler neck. This is, by the way, the driver's side of the engine compartment. This is the filler neck. This is the highest point in the cooling system. So make sure this is up right up where it's almost recessed right up in here when you shut this lid. And so this is where you're going to fill. This actually feeds down to the electric water pump, which we're going to cover all that stuff on the underneath side of the car. This is the coolant overflow. Nice little close location right here. That works out great. Generic one is fine. There's no reason why you need to get too fancy-dancy unless you want it to be ultra beautiful. And then right down underneath here, you can barely see this down here, but right in this location right here is a positive battery terminal. We keep this relatively accessible because of the fact that we land a lot of our positive wires right here, and I like to have a secondary terminal back in this area, so it's easy for me to be able to, let's say for instance, jump the car or run some sort of a service device like a test meter or something like that off this particular post. And so that gives you an idea. Engine bay is pretty tidy, pretty self-explanatory. There you go. Alrighty, we've got the trunk. Again, fire suppression system. Not very many people will do that. This right here is the intake system that comes through and goes back into basically a cold air intake because air rushes down off the roof, tumbles into the intake, into the filter right there, and it works out great. This is one way you can do it. This is using the stock fuel injection system, the stock intake manifold. And what's nice about this is you can keep that GM warranty if you buy a GM Performance engine all 100% intact because you're using all of the products that came from General Motors and all are applicable to the warranty. And so this is a boot that we had our upholster put on there, which is really nice, kind of seals up the trunk bay. And so that right here, this opening right in here, which is going to be a little bit difficult to see, but you can imagine it is about this big. It's just underneath there. And that allows that intake and the throttle body, which is located right here, to come through. Now, if you pan right down in this area right in here, this is the GM fuse block and relay panel. Sorry about the train in the background. We have a train track that's relatively close by, as you can tell. And so this relay panel, if you will, and fuse block right here, this is a great location. And as you can see, we went through the firewall and we grommeted it right here. So it's a great location for that. These right here, once again, are just the poles with regards to the fire suppression system and the feeder tubes to the heads. This stuff that you see back here, just in case you're wondering, supports a wing that bolts to the back of the car. So there's some extra kind of cool work that's gone in. There you go. Okay, we're going to start from the front of the car again, but this time we're going to be underneath it. So let's go ahead and show you what we've done for this front opening right here. And so this opening up into the front radiator, and if you can, you may be able to see the condenser in there. This opening needs to be volumetrically quite big. Now this lower piece that's right here that's been painted really, really nicely, this piece right here is our piece. Renegade Hybrid sells this, and this actually scoops a ton of air up in there. And then we take a stock bumper and we just open it up right here so it looks like typically in like some of the 914-6 race cars that they had for a while had openings like this because they had the oil cooler up in the front, and so this opening actually looks reminiscent of that sort of era. So this works out really nice. So that gives you an idea. Once again, all of the radiator instructions are going to be in writing, so that will give you a better overview of this, but I'm just kind of showing it to you. All right, so we're underneath the car. You can see this is the sway bar and the cross member to give you some orientation. This right here is the stock brake master. This piece right here can be the 19 millimeter upgraded one, or 17 millimeter if you have an earlier car. It really doesn't matter, but it does depend on the brakes. We went with the 19 millimeter on this because we did upgrade the brakes on this car. And so this is the bigger one. You can go all the way to a 21 millimeter, but it runs into this cross member and it's a little bit difficult to install. The 19 we like a lot. This is the key that I want to show you. It's a little bit difficult because we're using some floor and tunnel shield to protect it. But you're going to need to fabricate essentially a way to hold this Wilwood Clutch Master cylinder to the firewall. We do have a kind of a kit that you can weld together. We can send you pieces and some pictures, and that really makes it a lot easier. But this piece right here is what obviously lines up with the tunnel and with the Clutch Master, or the clutch pedal, with the armature that goes into the Clutch Master. And then you can see the feeder line that's right here that goes all the way to the back, that goes to the slave cylinder. So this is an upgrade only if you're doing the 6-speed Boxster S upgrade with the 914. Otherwise, if you're using a standard 914 transaxle, this is not needed. You stay with the cable, the stock setup, and it works terrific. All right, everybody asks about the coolant lines. The coolant lines that you can see underneath here, well, they are exposed to the ground, but if you look at many 911s through the years and many other Porsches, the AC lines are run on the sides, a lot of the stuff is run underneath the car, it's all been exposed to the ground, it's not that big of a deal. The reason why they do it, or we do it like this, is because of the fact that if you were to ever go over a speed bump, and if it were to bottom out, it just reinflates. And we use this really tough Gates green stripe. This stuff is just unbelievable. And then we use these conduit clamps, literally from Home Depot. The reason why we do this is because these are easily replaceable by you. So if you were to catch one of these or something like that, it's not a big deal. The other thing is if you're absolutely paranoid that you're ever going to cut one of these, which is, I've never ever seen it happen. I honestly have never seen it happen in the thousands of cars that we've done, no exaggeration. This stuff right here is that tough. But if you're ever worried about it, you can get a small barb, an 1.25 inch barb, put it in your glove box with a couple clamps, and if you ever did do an abrasion, you can cut it, put the barb in, put it back together again, fill the system, continue on your way. So that kind of gives you an idea. But underneath here, there's some creases where you run the water lines, and it works out just great. I wouldn't do solid tubing underneath here, just because of the fact that if you use a tubing that is, we'll say soft enough, like an aluminum tubing or something like that, that when you go over a speed bump, bottoms out, it's going to kink permanently, that would really screw you. This rubber stuff, it's like a tire. It's just that tough. It's going to handle it. Okay, we're going to cover the fuel pump location now, and then we're going to start talking about the cooling system with regards to what I call the F-log that's coming in right now. So we're going to zoom into this area right here. This is the high pressure fuel pump. So this would be typical to, like a Bosch or an inline fuel pump. You want to run your pressure somewhere between 52 and 58 psi. So depending on what pump you choose to use, that will deliver that pressure, and this is a good location for it, right on this firewall. And so as you can see, this ties into these lines right here. Now you can use the original plastic lines, but quite frankly, they're getting so old and they're deteriorating so much that these steel lines that we put in here actually work out just great. And so you can see we've got the 2 steel lines, and it's actually easy to run this through here. You take the old line out, you run the new line all the way through and up into the tank vicinity, and it works out just awesome, okay? All right, the other thing that I want to indicate is if you can see this line right here, this goes all the way up and goes into the F-log. Now this F-log allows you to be able to run a heater loop. It allows you to be able to run a sending unit, which the sending unit is right up here. Again, a little bit difficult to see. But then it allows you also to be able to feed up into the monoblock, which is the big radiator manifold that sits on the front of the engine. That's the inlet side. So this right here is very key to your setup. Now you know where that goes and how we do it. Works out just terrific. The crossbar, as you can see, pretty self-explanatory. Look at the orientation. Make sure that you note the orientation. The way that the offset is this moves to the front, puts the crossbar to the back. Alrighty, so now we're going to cover the water pump. This is the water pump, which mounts on a set of ears, which is located right on the crossbar. If by chance these ears are on the wrong side, you got the crossbar in backwards. So these ears need to be on the driver's side right here. And so this water pump, the electric water pump, beautiful Missouri unit, this right here, and if you want to come this direction, ties into the coolant lines, obviously. And so the flow goes through here, and it goes up, and the water block is up in the front. So you have an inlet and an outlet both on the same side right there. And so There's your pathway right there. Now if you notice that there is a T that comes in right here, there's also a T that comes in right here, so there's two T's. This T right here is the filler T from the filler neck up above. This one is the return for the heater loop. So we like to put these T's right here because obviously that's closest to the water pump, so it encourages the flow. So it sucks the water in and it does the right, basically volumetrically pulls the water through where it needs to go. So that's how we do our cooling system. It's again difficult to see, but we have our accessory package right up here. We use this little bracket right here as our alternator bracket. If you notice the way that the orientation of the alternator bracket is, the little smiley face is upside down. People don't get that right. They always want to put it the other way. This is upside down, and then this becomes the tensioner for the alternator. So make sure you orient that upside down. Otherwise, the rest of the alternator bracket is pretty self-explanatory. I am going to have you just pan just a little bit over here. This is a stock setup for the AC compressor. This is a stock tensioner that's right here, and that's what keeps the tension on the AC belt, and this is a stock bracket here. So that right here, as far as GM goes, is a very, very simple setup. Okay, now we're going to talk about the rear transmission mount. Again, this is with the Boxster S transaxle. This is a 6-speed transaxle. If it's a 914 style setup, we already have written instructions for that, but this actually goes through the Boxster S upgrade. So this is quite a nice setup. So here we go. This is the rear transmission mount. Keep in mind this car's already been driving for quite some time, so it's not perfectly clean. You get the idea. It works out great though that you can see some of this stuff. And so this piece right here goes together pretty self-explanatory. It is a crossbar that goes up over the top of the transaxle and it continues over to the other side. The big thing I want you to see is it ties into the original stock 914 mounts using a sport mount style motor mount. And so that's how that ties in right there. Also, with regards to the adapter kit, we can send you the written instructions on how to do the clutch, the flywheel, the pressure plate, the throw-out bearing, the pilot bearing, all that sort of stuff, the adapter plate, everything right here. We can send you the written instructions, so there's no need to discuss that. And obviously, we don't have an exploded view of that available for you right at this immediate moment, but there's the adapter kit. Exhaust-wise, let's go ahead and pan back just a little bit and I'll show you what we've done on this particular car. This guy wanted somewhat of an aggressive sound. He liked it to be kind of throaty. So we came down, went up over. What we did in this area right here is the catalytic converters. There's one on each side. I like cats. I do like to clean up the air. I am somewhat environmentally conscious. People laugh at that, but I do like to clean it up. And I also don't like anybody to say, hey, you got a stinky car. Well, with the LS engines, they run so clean anyway, it's not that big of a deal. And you're not wasting cats because you're trying to use a carburetor or something like that. These cats will live pretty much forever. We do use high-flow cats. MagnaFlow makes a real nice set of high-flow cats. That's what we put on this particular car. And then I just used some inline resonators with an X-pipe in this particular car. And it's got a great sound. So we technically don't even have a muffler. We just have these glass packs that are right here. And with the crossover that you see right here and our tips, it sounds terrific. And so if you want to go with a quieter sound, you just put mufflers right in this area, or you can do a different configuration. This is a remote filter or a remote stand, if you will, that's bolted to the side of the block, and we use the filter for this particular application because we did a custom oil pan. This guy's going to road race, so this has got trapdoors, it's got windage trays, it's a really, really nice oil pan, and you can see we're really plumbed in and out of the engine right here. Now, something else this allowed us to be able to do is to be able to run an oil cooler. This is going to be impossible to see, so you're going to have to use your imagination. But if you follow these lines right up in here, and if you follow it down here and up inside the body of the car, this is the pocket that's directly underneath the sail panel on the 914. Now, everybody says, yeah, but it doesn't get very much airflow. Let me explain something. Engine oil is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, we'll say 210 to 240 degrees. The air that's swirling around in there is going to be, let's say, 100 degrees. So the temperature differential and the ability for that oil cooler to be able to work will be no problem whatsoever. And so that's where we decided on this particular car, which is going to be a mild track car. That's where we decided to put it because it kind of freed up some space in the back of the engine bay. And so that kind of covers everything. We are always available to take questions. We're always available Monday through Friday for your telephone calls, for emails, and things like that. And so please give us a call at 702-739-8011. If I went too fast or if I didn't cover something, we'll be happy to get that information to you. riding instructions to cover all of this sort of stuff. We're in the process of doing so. This is going to take care of some of that right now, hopefully. And there will be certain parts, such as the clutch components, that will be written. And so that being the case, when you ask for those, we'll definitely get those to you. This is Scott from Renegade Hybrids. www.renegadehybrids.com is the email, or is the web address. Email Travis at Renegade Hybrids, Scott at Renegade Hybrids. You get the idea. We'll definitely talk to you soon. Thank you very much for checking us out.